Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I'm excited to share Nancy Spooner's journey with you today. She is a longtime friend and Hera Hub member. Her career has been just absolutely incredible. I was looking on her LinkedIn before we hopped in, and she has the most incredible experience and background. I can't wait to dive in. 15 years ago, she took the entrepreneurial leap and established Tempo Live Events, initially booking freelancers for shows as a part-time endeavor. However, the unexpected challenges posed by the pandemic transformed her sideline venture into a flourishing enterprise, providing essential support to event agencies and independent contractors worldwide. Welcome to the show today, Nancy.
Hey, Felina. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, let's dive in. Want to go back in time and let's talk about passion as it related to choosing your college of interest. I see you went to SDSU here in San Diego, and talk about the major that you chose and why you chose that major.
Alrighty, I am a television and film major from San Diego State, go Aztecs. And the passion was Universal Studios. I remember as a kid being at Universal Studios thinking, this is so cool. I want to make TV. I want to make movies. I want to be a part of this. So, I mean, what if I couldn't believe it was a degree? I mean, how much fun to get a degree in making movies. So yeah, that's how it all started. Just Universal Studios gets credit for that one.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
And during your degree at SDSU, did you take on any jobs or internships or roles that led you down that career path?
Sure did. Yep. I was interning all the time. I interned probably at every news station here in San Diego, as well as PBS. And PBS is on campus, the public broadcasting station, and that was really fun because it's very hands-on. They let the students run camera and teleprompter and handle the talent. It was really a cool experience. The PBS portion, the news stations in town, was really neat because I was able to I remember writing like little news blurbs, like up next on the news, Oprah has just blah, blah, blah. Like I would write those little topics in the news for the news station, which felt so empowering as a college student to hear your writing on TV when, between commercials or whatever coming up next. So I think interning at all of those places. And then also I interned at the Film Commission in San Diego. And I would probably give the Film Commission the credit for my career taking off after college. The news stations, it was a hard time to graduate. The economy wasn't doing well, and so nobody was really hiring. And so the news stations, I didn't really get any career out of those, but really good experience. But it was the Film Commission where I got my feet in the door to films coming into town, and I started my freelancing career because of that internship.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about TV and film and your career there. And you have many other incredible things that you've done in your career. We need like 5 hours to tell your life story here. You've done so much, but give us the highlights. What were some of the things that you worked on right out of college?
Right out of college, it was I volunteered, and I always tell people that want in our industry this. I volunteered on a television special happening on an aircraft carrier in San Diego. And my original volunteer position was going to be taking these country artists, musicians, from the bottom deck to the top deck where the show was happening, and they get lost on the aircraft carrier. But when the producer saw my resume, he said, wait, you actually have experience in production. Come with me. I want you in the production office. So I worked in the production office and I was part of the transportation team. So I was coordinating the shuttle rides from the hotels to pick up the artists and bring them back to the ship and so on and so forth. And from that one volunteer position, I got my first job. A TV show or movie came into town, and the woman that was in the transportation department on that television special on the aircraft carrier saw my resume and said, hey, I worked with her. She'd be a great production assistant, which was entry level in our industry. And she took me to my very first made for TV movie. And that was where the ball started rolling. And from there, somebody saw my resume on the next show that came to town and they brought me, and I was a production assistant entry level, which lasted not very long because I was a hustler. And then I got on my first feature film with Chuck Norris, which was very fun. And I became like the set PA, like the head production assistant. And then from there, I got on Grizzly Adams movie because I kept asking people and telling people, I want to do this. I want to move up. I want to be this person. And if you tell people that you want to do something, most oftentimes they listen and they let you have a shot at it. And I always tell my friends that too, that want in our industry, just tell people what you want to do. And I was with Grizzly Adams. If you remember Grizzly Adams, I did a movie with Grizzly Adams in Oregon as an assistant director, which was the path that I wanted to go. So
amazing.
Yeah. So those were my big television and film highlights, I think, was the first Chuck Norris one and then Grizzly Adams. And from there was a lot of episodic and feature films that would come through San Diego at a studio called Stu Siegel Productions that used to be in town.
I remember that name. Yes, absolutely. That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
So what then took you away from TV and film and into action sports and sports in general?
Great question. The pivotal moment was one of the clients I had as a freelancer. I would do video production for her. She always threw me in over my head. From production assistant to production coordinator, she would just throw stuff at me and I would swim. She believed in me and she would let me push the envelope. And one day she said, you're coming with me to San Francisco. I want to show you something. And it was the X Games. And she put me up in a tower and I was to be directing the live show for the X Games. So I wasn't directing the television broadcast, but I was working alongside broadcast. They were on my headset, but I was the one telling the live announcer in the venues when to speak and the videos when to play and the promotions when to run on the big screen and the producers on the field to interview the athletes. And that's when action sports started. And then from action sports, one of my colleagues got a job at the Olympics in Sydney. And I said, oh my gosh, I would love to work the Olympics. So here I am telling somebody what I want to do. When the Olympics came to Salt Lake, she was hired as executive producer of sport production, which is what I was doing, is producing. And she took me to Salt Lake and I got to produce long track speed skating at the Salt Lake Olympics, which was probably one of my favorite jobs I've ever had in my life. It was such a fun job.
How exciting. Amazing.
Yep. Yeah, it was great. And then from there, I say there's these little highlights in my career. There was a guy named Tony Crescenzo, and he was our entertainment producer. And so he was in charge at the Oval of all the entertainment outside when you're in line, or maybe the band that was inside the venue. And he would come into my office every day and say, what can I do? And I'd say, I don't know. Like, we had such a great organized gig at the speed skating oval. I said, I don't know, but when I get out of here, I'm taking you with me. I loved your work ethic. The guy just was always like wanting to do more than his share, which is how my dad raised me. And lo and behold, we leave the Olympics and Tony goes back to his career. He did a lot of corporate events and he asked me if I was available to do a pharmaceutical job with him with Lance Armstrong in DC. So Tony actually took me to my first corporate event. And that's when my corporate ball started rolling and I started getting jobs in the corporate sector, which is pretty much where I live now. And I give Tony that credit. And I did take him to action sports, by the way. He did do some X Games and some Do series. He did his action sports stuff, but he's the one that put me in line for corporate events.
Awesome. And for somebody that's listening to this, Nancy, that perhaps is, graduating from college and thinking about their career path, why a career path in events? What did you love most about it? Or what do you still love most about it?
I still love it. You know what? It's there. Everything I've done is the same to me. It's taking that blank canvas and having somebody's vision come to life and being a part of making something come to life, whether it's a movie or a commercial or a corporate video or a corporate sales meeting. You know, these big conferences that I produce now and I'm a part of and my team's a part of, it's watching all of these strangers, all of these people come together and build something really big and cool. It's the same whether it's the X Games or it's a pharmaceutical sales meeting to me. It's a blank canvas that turns into a venue and attendees having a good time.
Fantastic.
Love it. Mm-hmm.
And let's get into Tempo. How did this begin? I mean, effectively, this has been your career path all along, but what catalyzed building a brand around Tempo live events and the work you were doing? How did that morph into this business?
You know what? It was because I, like you, am a connector. I love helping people. And I was getting a lot of people work. People would call me and say, Nance, are you available? And I'd say, no, I'm not. But hey, so-and-so is, or do you know anybody that can do this? I'm like, I do. I know people that can do this. And I realized I was getting a lot of people work. And I realized if I made a penny for everybody I got a job for, I'd probably have a side hustle. So I started Tempo in 2008 with just a Google spreadsheet and a handful of quote unquote friends on it, colleagues. And my clients loved it because it was one phone call and one invoice. And I would line up a team of event specialists for them. And my friends loved it because I was getting them jobs that they didn't know about. So that's how Tempo started. And it was fine. It was a great side hustle. I still did my freelancing and I still had this little side hustle of getting other people work and had a side income. It was fun.
Yeah. And at what point did that switch over to your full-time focus?
Yep, that is pandemic related, which is so weird because the pandemic is what shut down our industry, right? That's when everything came to screeching halt, but events, people gathering. So Tempo was growing and I had maybe 40 contracts a year with contractors and then the world shut down. And so the connector and me decided to hold this happy hour on this new quote unquote thing called Zoom. And I called for a bunch of contractors and I was like, grab a glass of wine and let's meet up on Tuesday because I want to know what just happened and I miss you guys because first and second quarter in corporate events, those are sales meetings and kickoffs and that's our bread and butter. Like that's the busy time for us and it all got shut down. So I missed all my friends. That's my social life as well. I'm a solopreneur working from my house. So that's also where I miss my friends. So I called on this happy hour and it was fine. We would talk about, I would bring a theme to the Zoom and I'd say, who's your favorite person you ever had on stage? And the next week it was like, hey, tell us lessons learned backstage. And it was just really fun and lighthearted. But as the weeks moved on, the conversations got more serious and we started asking each other about unemployment because some of them were 1099s and what about these PPP loans for those of us that were businesses. And I was like, okay, I'm bringing in my accountant. So the next week I brought in an accountant and then we're talking about our contracts that were all null and void. And so I brought in an attorney to talk about our contracts. And then one of the women in our group said she's going to be producing the NFL draft, which was the first virtual event the world had really ever seen. So I said, come one, come all, tell a friend, Hera, next week, you're going to sit down and tell us how in the world you pulled off this event. And you were in somebody's house filming for what? For ESPN. And there were dozens of people that arrived on that happy hour. And it was from then on called the Tempo Think Tank. Somebody coined it the Think Tank. And then our group got on. Every Tuesday we met and we talked about how we're going to call shows from home, how we're going to handle all of these audio devices coming into our heads when we're now sitting at our desk, when you have your multi-view and your vMix and your Zoom feed. And what is this thing called Unity, which is how we'd all communicate with our intercom. And what are platforms? What is a platform? Who's worked with such a platform? And I'm telling you all this, Selena, because the Tempo database just started exploding. They started telling their friends and their friends started telling their friends. And then they started telling their clients. And Tempo became a place of freelancers that were gathering and training each other on on virtual events. So that's when Tempo just exploded. I think we've done as much as 220 contracts in a 12-month period now, up from 40. And that's when I also decided, with the help of a business coach who was one of my guests on the think tank, he's like, Nance, why don't you focus on Tempo and not Nancy anymore and see what happens. And I just started focusing on the business, and it just kept growing and growing. And then meeting with you and going through one of your amazing workshops, I started working on my business, not in my business, as you've told me as well. And it's just been crazy ever since. And I love it. Now I have a business. My side hustle is I will direct a show for you if I like you a lot and you're going to send me someplace really cool. so I still do it to stay relevant. But yeah, we grew in the pandemic. Crazy.
That's so awesome. I love those stories. I've been lucky enough to hear and help tell many of those stories, because so much came from the pandemic, right? So much tragedy and obviously a lot of bad came, but there was so much innovation, just like there is anytime you have something that is disrupting the entire world like this.
Yeah.
So I love to hear that. So Nancy, talk about, the business now, where are you and where are you going? What are you excited about for this upcoming year?
Well, for the first time, Felina, you'll be proud of me, is I'm really focusing on where are we going? I've never looked forward. It's just grown. The business has just grown, and I haven't done anything to try to grow it. I've just been running alongside it going, well, this is fun. But with your help, I have now an operations coordinator. I have a fractional CFO, and they're taking so much off my plate that for the first time, I'm actually attending conferences to try to find ways to grow our business, because our clients are production companies that need additional support with freelancers when the shows come along. And so now I realize there's so many of them out there, and there's only so many shows one person can do, but I have almost 1,000 freelancers in our database now. If I can go find these clients that need freelancers, then we'll see where tempo goes. So I am sitting down with my COO, Al, my husband, who has run and successfully built many businesses, and he's mapping it out for me, because I don't know how to map out. This is an accidental entrepreneur that we've made of myself. So we're actually in the stages now of plotting the course and seeing where we're going and how we're going to get there and what the KPIs are that we need to measure to see if we're hitting our goals. So I don't know where we're going, but we're trying to go somewhere, and I'm mapping that out as we speak.
Awesome. And if someone's listening to this, Nancy, and they want to get involved, they're like, this sounds amazing. I want to get involved in the production industry. What's your recommendation for them? Where should they go or start?
I say they start, come on over to tempoliveevents.com, join our team, because we still hold monthly think tanks where we all get together as entrepreneurs, as freelancers, and talk about whatever the latest topic is, whether it's how to present yourself as a real business with insurance, or what kind of business are you going to be, an LLC, an S Corp, or we talk about the event production burnout. How are we handling it? Like, we're still coaching each other on that. We have a Slack channel with 1,000 freelancers on it, and there's so much fun watching 1,000 freelancers talk to each other about our industry and about what's going on and what struggles they're having. That's also where we post our jobs, so you can see the jobs that are out there, and you can get an idea. Even if you're not qualified for the jobs, you can at least see the job postings that are coming through Tempo and figure out what skills you need if you need to build any more skills. I'm always posting other ways to build your skill base. Like, there's a gentleman in New York City who is educating people how to call shows and be stage managers and deck managers. And so I'm always trying to educate the freelancers. So I'd say, come on over here. I got you. We can point you in the right direction. And then just keep talking to people. Whenever you meet somebody in our industry, ask them for another connection, and meet another person, and then meet another person, and just keep telling people what you want to do and get in there. And don't be afraid to volunteer. I mean, events always want volunteers. And if you volunteer, like I did, you get your name out there. And I still volunteer. I'll still show up and help out on people's events, because you never know who you're going to meet.
Absolutely. Great advice.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, tempoliveevents.com is the website. And Nancy, thank you so much for your time. It's been really, really fun to hear more about your background and your career path. And I'm super excited for what's to come in 2024.
too. Thanks for having me, Felina. I appreciate it. And you're such a great resource and a great mentor. And I appreciate all that you have done for me in my business over the years and our friendship. It's very, very valuable to me. So thank you.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.